बोला कि तुम हिंदू हो, तुम यहाँ से चले जाओ। पब्लिक प्लेस पे उन्होंने इतनी गुंडागर्दी की, तलवारें लहरा रहे थे, पुलिस कुछ नहीं किया।
Ever since Sikhs for Justice announced this so-called referendum, we have been drawing the attention of the Australian authorities to the potential for violence and for sowing disharmony.
Namaste, Jai Hind, and welcome to this edition of The Right Stand. I'm Anand Narsimhan. Ladies and gentlemen, there are elements who are desperate for attention. There are elements whose narrative is slipping and slipping fast, and they will go to any extent to go ahead and hurt Bharat and, of course, try and strike its DNA, and that is Hindutva or Hinduness. So the attacks at Hindu temples, the attacks at the Indian fraternity, diaspora, and anybody who identifies proudly with Hindustan are only going to increase, because there are elements who do not want Bharat to succeed, who do not want a stable government, who do not want a vibrant democracy, and who do not want Bharat to get its rightful place among the global people or in the world. And we are taking big steps as a nation under the leadership of Prime Minister Narendra Modi over the last 8 years, and we are in the direction where we want to be a developed nation by 2047, by the time we complete 100 years as a nation. But there are elements like these in Australia who would want to unsettle, who would want to disrupt, who are so desperate that they will do anything to get attention. The idea tonight is not to give these elements attention, but the idea tonight, ladies and gentlemen, is to wake up and to realize how desperate the enemy is, how brutal the enemy is, and how devious the enemy is. We as a nation need to wisen up to this, and we as a nation need to flex our muscle with our friends to tell them, don't give such elements even an inch of space. Freedom of expression cannot mean, in any country cannot mean, talking secession and burning the tricolour or burning the national flag of any nation. Had the same thing happened with the Australian flag in Indian soil, what do you think would have been the response of the world, and what do you think would have been the response? Now, this has happened on Australian soil. What do you think should be Bharat's response, and how should Australia respond if it really believes India is its true friend? Indoors, ECTA we are talking about as Economic Cooperation and Trade Agreement, and ECTA we are trying to push. We may be competitive on the sporting field, but we have been friends. But is this what friends allow you to do? You allow enemies a free run, you allow radicals a free run, you allow paid agents of Pakistan a free run. And they go ahead and not just have a free run, they run riot on our tricolour, on our people, on our citizens. And the basic DNA of Hindustan is what they want to attack, because they are trying to break this country. That's the narrative they are trying to push. They're trying to break it via community and also in the guise of territory. Let's see, why were these signs ignored? That's a question that comes to mind. In the run-up to all of this, there were a few incidents which happened. First, these posters started coming up where they talked about breaking away from India. These warning signs were they ignored. Those who assassinated Indira Gandhi, those assassins, their pictures were put. There was this call to some kind of referendum to avenge the killers, etc. Car rally calling for a Khalistani referendum was carried out. Then all of this happened, and the second temple was actually vandalized after the car rally. Bhindranwale poster calling for a separate state, carving out a part of Bharat was put out there. These posters came out. Why were they ignored by the Australian authorities? Why were they ignored or taken lightly even by the Indian High Commission there? Questions will be asked of everyone. But why was this allowed? Why were these signs ignored? Then what happened when these signs were ignored in Melbourne? Indians were attacked by Khalistanis. They were attacked with swords by this entire gang, targeted while carrying the Tiranga. The Tiranga was snatched, these people were put, and the Tiranga was insulted, misbehaved with, ladies and gentlemen. My blood boils even while I want to talk about this. Don't you think that had you been there, what you would have taught, what would you have done? Taught these people a lesson? A few cops, handful of cops were sent. These elements were not taken seriously. Should we then give it back to these nations who don't take us seriously? How should we do that? Or should we say, no, this is not who we are. We will ask them to take action. How long will we? Tolerance is a virtue. Should we make it a vice is a very, very big question. Should others think it as a weakness? That's the question. This happened on the 29th. Before that, what happened? ISKCON temple was vandalized and defaced. Anti-India Hindu graffiti on the walls. Khalistani supporters were behind this hate. This happened on the 23rd of January. Then you had the Sri Shiva Vishnu temple that was vandalized in the Karam Browns region. Anti-Hindu graffiti was smeared. Anti-India graffiti was put. The same vandals, they were still not arrested. Despite CCTV footage, everything given to the cops. This happened on the 16th of January. You see the build-up? Then, first, it was the BAPS Swaminarayan temple that was defaced and vandalized by these vandals. This was done by these Pak-sponsored agents who go ahead and say, "Dekho, maine ye kiya, mujhe ab paise do." This is their job. These are paid for vandals, paid for activities, and these are paid for activists and puppets who themselves don't know anything about Sikhi, they don't know anything about Hinduism and the close bonds that both Hinduism and Sikhism share. These are such elements. And they are one, and their leader and those who are organizing this have been already designated terrorists and unwanted elements by Bharat. Why are they then given a free run is a question. Again, what does the eyewitness reveal what happened on the 29th? And these details, ladies and gentlemen, you need to focus on these details. The eyewitness reveals shocking details, the horror of what happened. Insulting the tricolour in the name of a referendum that they're trying to push for the last 8 years. Nobody's listening to it, but still, desperate call to try and get attention. But you insult my tricolour, should I let you get away with it? As a Bharatiya Nagrik, will you let anybody get away with insulting our tricolour? Should they not understand what the might of Bharat is? Further revelations. Indian students attacked with sticks and swords. Third revelation, 30 to 40 Khalistani members, pro-Khalistani entities attacked from all sides. Fourth revelation, Khalistan sympathizers hurled anti-Hindu slur. Fifth revelation from the eyewitness, Khalistan sympathizers tried to snatch phones also. Loot pe bhi aa gaye log. 15 to 20 students severely injured in the attack. Armed people attacked defenceless Indians who were just peacefully carrying out a march with a tricolour. Police warned of violence if security not given, but hardly any attention given. The cops locally in Melbourne did not pay heed to warning letters, and it seemed like the police sided with the pro-Khalistan group. That's what the eyewitness says. That the cops, the authorities were backing these elements. How and why was that being allowed in Australia? And if this is what they think they can get away with in Melbourne, what should we as a nation do in our response? Free run for anti-India radicals in Australia is a question that we ask. Let's go across to our guests straight away and ask them this question. I have Vinod Bansal, spokesperson of the Vishwa Hindu Parishad, with us. Puneet Sahni, activist, joining us from New York, is with us. Sarah Gates, Dharmic scholar and Hindu Human Rights Australasia, is also with us. And we should have Sanjay Dikshit, Chairman, Jaipur Dialogue, joining us. My namaste and greetings to everybody. Thank you very much. Not a very happy day for me personally as a citizen to watch the kind of ruckus and the kind of rampage these elements were allowed to run. Sarah Gates, you had said that the authorities, if they are notified, they should take cognizance. And you had very clearly said, and you reside in Australia, that Australia allows for freedom of speech. But freedom of speech and expression does not mean disrespecting another nation or talking secessionist tones, adopting secessionist tones. Here a tricolour has been, my tricolour has been disrespected. And the tone was that they want to carve out a separate area out of Bharat. Your reaction, Saraji?
Well, of course, nobody wants partition 2.0 because we all know how much bloodshed and violence came about due to partition and how much communalism still remains in diaspora today, as well as in India, due to the violence of partition. And this needs to be understood by the Australian authorities. We're not just opposed to some kind of peaceful democratic election, which is really a farce, and we all know it. This is a publicity stunt, and they've been building up with publicity to secure public sympathy for their cause and spreading a lot of disinformation. So the public, the police, I'd say many of the authorities really don't have much idea about what's going on, and part of that is because they're not taking seriously the Hindu point of view, and they're not defending Hindus' human rights, and they're not taking proper cognizance of the degree of the vitriol and hatred that's coming toward Hindus in diaspora because of Khalistanis and other separatists spreading disinformation and propaganda against us. It's really quite disturbing. We need action, and we need strong action, and I don't know what India can do, but please do as much as you possibly can to work with authorities, because this group really needs to be banned. They're dangerous to our society. That's my perspective. I think they need to be banned.
They've
have already
been
proven they're violent.
Their leader has been
What do they
designated a terrorist on India by the Indian government, Sarah Gates. But what has happened, Sarah ji, is that Australia has given this man a visa. They have allowed this person and his vandals, his group of rabble rousers and mischief mongers a free run. They have allowed them to go ahead and conduct this. Why should I'm just asking you, will Australia tolerate if India were to allow such elements on Indian soil who are doing something against Australia and the Australian flag?
They gave them a chance to have their peaceful democratic referendum, and they failed. They've proven time and time again that this group of anti-India and anti-Hindu activists are willing to use violence on Australian soil. I don't know what more it's going to take now that they've had their opportunity to have this group banned. We have banned other groups that have committed much less violence on our soil. So I think the time is ripe to start having that conversation. Because until they're banned, there's not much we can really do. They can only apply the law. So yes.
I really appreciate your candid point of view, and I also am very, very humbled that you've taken the time out. It's late in the night, past midnight in Australia, and you're still with us, Sarahji. I'll come back to you in just a bit. The early morning in New York. Puneet Sahni is with us. Puneet, before I come across to you, I just want to ask Vinod Bansal ji. Vinod ji, ek baat khatak rahi hai. Ki what is the point of Bharat having such muscle, such might, such great responses? If our own High Commissioner is going to visit the temples 25 days after the first incident happens, 15 days after the second incident happens, and 1 day after the overall ruckus has happened, और फिर कह रहे हैं हमने कोई कोताही नहीं बरती. How do you aren't you angry? Why wasn't this raised at the highest platform, and did India actually raise the decibel levels? How many letters were written by various Hindu councils, Indian diaspora, warning them that this should not be allowed?
Definitely, I do agree with you, Anand. The question is that कि जिस तरह से विदेशी धरती पर भारतीयता और हिंदू धर्म पर जी कुठाराघात किए जा रहे हैं, उसके विरुद्ध न सिर्फ अपने ऑस्ट्रेलियन सरकार को बल्कि भारत सरकार को भी अविलंब उस पर कदम उठाना चाहिए था. ये आपने एक नई बात मुझे बताई है. वास्तव में मुझे भी ध्यान में नहीं था इस बात को लेकर के. आई अप्रिशिएट योर फीलिंग्स एंड दी एक्सपोजे. कभी इतने दिनों के बाद में हमारा जो हाई कमीशन गया, द क्वेश्चन इज दैट कि इट शुड हैव बीन टेकन एज अर्ली, इमीडिएटली, आई कैन से. And the same day, the High Commission of India to Australia should have taken up the matter on the same day. Why and what for they were keep on waiting for that? और दूसरी बात यह कि definitely we will take up this matter with the concerned higher authority कि आखिरकार ऐसा negligence और ऐसा जो delay क्यों किया गया आखिरकार. देखिए, जिस सॉइल पर मेरे तिरंगे को जलाया जाए, जिस सॉइल पर मेरे धर्म पर आक्रमण किया जाए, जिस सॉइल पर मेरे पूज्य स्थलों पर जो हमले किए जाएं, उस सॉइल के बारे में मेरे क्या विचारधारा होगी और क्या धारणा होगी, इस बारे में वो उनके लोगों को भी समझना चाहिए कि अगर इसी तरह की घटना कोई भारत के अंदर होती और आपके ऑस्ट्रेलियन जो फ्लैग को या ऑस्ट्रेलियन मान्यता को कोई दत्ता बताता तो आपको कैसा लगता. मुझे लगता है इस बारे में ऑस्ट्रेलियन सरकार को भी गंभीरता से प्रयास करना चाहिए था और भारत सरकार को भी इसको त्वरित गति से इसको लेना चाहिए था। और अभी भी बेसिकली उन्होंने न तो किसी ने माफी मांगी, नहीं किसी की गिरफ्तारी मुझे लगता है उतनी
नहीं हुई है। मैं आपको ये दिस इज एग्जैक्टली व्हाट आई एम ट्राइंग टू से, विनोद जी। सो आई एम इंटरप्टिंग यू हियर। 12 तारीख 12th of January is when the first attack on the Bap Swaminarayan Mandir happened. It happened in Melbourne and it had been building up. They carried out a car rally there. There was not, and there were again 30, 40, 50 people who had come, and there was a lot of rabble-rousing that was done. What has happened is that the diaspora there wrote repeated letters to the High Commission. They wrote letters to the Melbourne Police Department. There was a reaction and condemnation of these attacks by the Foreign Ministry of Australia. But even then, these people have been allowed a free run. Now, as much as you would want to question the Australian authorities, my question is also to what the Indian authorities were doing. Because what repeatedly the Indian diaspora has come out and said here on CNN News 18 is that the Indian High Commission was not responsive. The High Commissioner there responded much later. 12 तारीख को अटैक हुआ है, उन्होंने आज जाकर ये कहा है कि मैं इस्कॉन में जाके उनसे जाके मिला हूं। जो इस्कॉन का अटैक हुआ था, इस्कॉन मंदिर पे अटैक 23 तारीख को हुआ था. He has gone to visit the Bap Swaminarayan Mandir. Pictures have been put out today. These visuals have, these confirmations of condemnations have come. You have not stopped this event from happening. Sanjay Dixit ji is also there with us. My point, Vinod ji, is that this should not have been allowed. If Indos Ekta is happening, if India and Australia are members of Quad and we respect each other's sovereignty, then an attack on Bharat's sovereignty should not have been allowed by a designated terrorist. India has designated this man a terrorist and he was allowed a visa and a free run in Australia. How seriously have we taken it?
Absolutely. These are the very important and these immediate questions to be addressed by the government of Bharat as well as the government of Australia. The thing is that immediately when the things are these unfortunate incidences happened, VHP Australia has taken up the matter with the concerned authorities of the Australia. And let me find out today with the VHP Australia, because we do have a strong organization in Australia also. And I'll definitely call on all those fellow members and talk to them that what action has been taken and what remedial action has been initiated by the government of Australia to avoid and curb all those incidences to happen in future.
Sir, the Hindu Council there
has to ensure that
the Hindu Council there has written letters.
Yeah,
they have all raised these issues over the last 20 days. They're raising these issues and they are saying there has been no response. There has been no action. I'm just going to bring in Sanjay Dixit ji and also Puneet Sani. Puneet, coming across to you. Namaste. There are people who are wielding swords and they claim to be doing it in the name of religion. They are also trying to push a thought process where it says that Hindus and Sikhs are different. That's why we want to carve out a land out of Hindustan. This is the kind of language that's being uttered. The abuses that were hurled, deplorable. Why and how are such elements prospering? And are you in favor of Gurudwaras hanging out Bhindranwale's posters and also collecting donations under the Khalistan movement?
Jai Bharati Anand. So there are several points that you've raised. Actually, if you don't mind, with the earlier two guests you were discussing, and I think that is most germane, and I want to add a different point, but it's actually very important. So please allow me this consideration. So you were saying the Australian flag and who gave the visa and this India. So I tell you, I live in America, right? They have very extensive. In America, you can burn the American flag. And this Pannu guy, I think, is an American citizen. So he doesn't need even visa to go there. He can travel visa free. But anyways, the case you are making is, India, India, India. So Indians are very small. I know how this bureaucracy and the government works and I've studied terrorism. The case you should be making, what is happening now is Australia, is exactly how they started in Canada. And in Canada, they blasted this plane from mid-air and what they have done, they have infiltrated the system. There is so much violence. They have basically bullied everyone. They destroy careers. We should actually be making this case that these people are criminals. Forget about Hindu Sikh. These people are terrorists and these are criminals and this is what they've done in Canada and this is how they started. And then this issue is basically, relevant for everyone, for the average Australian. I think this is This is the case we should be making. And the second point I want to make is, you like ye kar diya, wo kar diya, this is. I am always like, I believe the responsibility lies in what are we doing?
Correct.
So I am saying, like this madness, they were doing for a long time. But did you see ever this referendum happening? So I don't doubt Modi ji's intention. He's running a corruption-free government in India, which is a miracle. And he's the hardest worker of any politician. So I have a lot of regard for him. But he is so ill-advised on Punjab. And, he has almost created a disaster. You can't imagine how Punjab was won, the peace. At such a high sacrifice, like people don't even know. Maybe we should do another episode just on that.
Yes.
But I'll give you an example. For example, these criminals understand deterrent, right? So, for example, these 300 odd people, they were on the blacklist. That these are Khalistani terrorists. And it was not, some people have publicly expressed regret and disavowed violence. Modi ji, to show like his large-heartedness, he basically removed this in one go 300 people from this blacklist.
Yeah.
So you have removed the deterrence. Actually, you should have increased the deterrence. So blacklist means you can't enter India. I said you put them on no-fly list. That means you can't even cross the Indian airspace. So you basically remove the deterrence. These people have become emboldened. And now, everybody. So Sanjay Dixit ji is here. I will say, I have given lectures on, Sikhism and Sikh history.
Yeah.
And they are very well watched. And you see, like I'm just saying, 2 years back, if you ask any Indian, Sikhs used to be one of the most beloved community, the most respected community. You can do a survey of that. Of anybody, you say like, these people stand for hard work, patriotism, upright. The tourist guides written by foreigners about India, they were like, you can always trust a Sikh. And now, I give in this 1 year that I've been giving talks with Sanjay Dixit ji. You see, like I see in comments, there is so much anger coming against the Sikhs. And whatever I said 1 year ago, I was again criticizing the government policy. You don't know what you're doing and you're going to destroy this country. You see if a very well-respected community, which is most respected, try to think, there is a country X and there is a community there which is the most respected. And in an year, that community becomes suspicious. So that community is, of course, being harmed. But how dangerous and how bad it is for the country. Yeah. So I don't doubt their intentions. But this government policy on Punjab is completely,
You have a very valid point.
I don't want to use it.
You have a very valid point.
Right. See,
let me just underline this, that for me, these are criminals. For me and for every other Indian who I know personally or who's watching this broadcast, Sikhs remain at the highest esteem and their contribution can never be forgotten. Your contribution will not be forgotten, Puneet, because you are bringing back histories which has been brushed by history and historical facts and evidences which have been brushed under the carpet, and you're putting it out there for people to know, realize, and of course once again awaken. Every time there are people who have to do the work of Jambavan, what they did for Hanuman. So you are doing that for community or people who've been perhaps disjointed or disconnected with what the history is. And that too because of these kind of narratives. But you have a very strong point that the way this government perhaps is going about Punjab, they've got it wrong. And they got it wrong even with the farm laws then. So the intent may have been very honest, but the way it's been executed or it's been approached, it's somewhere boomeranging and it's only hurting the cause, not helping it. Sanjay Dixit ji, some questions that we need to ask ourselves as a nation, as Puneet said, as Vinod ji said, that before we ask somebody else, what are you doing about it? We have to ask ourselves, what are we doing about it?
Anand, let me say that I was almost on the ground because I have returned from Australia only 3 days back. And I was there for nearly a month and a half. And during that period, I also conducted a show with Puneet. And it was on this subject only.
Right.
And that was because I had been meeting people there, and I had 3 meetings with the community in Melbourne and another one in Gold Coast. And one uniform feedback that I got from there was that the Indian High Commission just wasn't bothered. And you could see the evidence and how it could not be bothered. And if you look at, these were criminals, they're coming from outside.
Yeah.
But in the crowd they mobilized, they were also Indian passport holders.
Yeah.
They were also Australian citizens whom they could manage to mobilize. And they could have been deterred by a simple advisory from the from the Indian High Commission in Australia to tell them that if anybody commits a criminal act and if there is any evidence found against anyone, then his passport would be withdrawn. All they could have done was to impress upon the Australian federal government and the Victorian government to have some kind of a deterrence issue where they would say that any Indian citizen or any foreign citizen who's doing this will be deported.
Yeah.
You just deport one person and you see the effect.
Yeah.
Just deport one person. Just cancel the passport of one person and you see the effect. This whole thing would be nipped in the bud. It will never come. But as somebody was saying on the channel, in fact, I am speaking from a mobile, so I can't figure out who it was. So the community had been writing to them. On the 12th of January, this BAPS incident happened.
Yes.
I was very much there in Australia at that time. The people at that time talked to me, and when I conducted an episode with Puneet, we discussed about it. It was a very well-watched episode as usual. And in spite of that, and in spite of people sounding the Australian High Commission time and again, they did nothing. Not only that, they did nothing. Just look at this. I'll give you an example. Manpreet Vora, who is the High Commissioner there, he did not have the courtesy to meet anyone. He did not visit the temples even once.
Oh, he's put out the pictures now. Sanjay ji, Sanjay ji, that's exactly. In fact, you know what happened? आप ऑस्ट्रेलिया में थे, and when 12th this happened on 13th. नहीं, मैं आप ही के पास आ रहा हूँ. मैं आप ही के पास आ रहा हूँ. No, I'm coming back to you. No, I'm coming back to you. I'm saying they came back and said the same thing. That Manpreet Vora को letter लिखा, phone किया, he didn't even answer. हाँ जी, बोलिए.
Because yesterday I put out a picture. Yesterday on my Twitter, I put out a picture in which Manpreet Vora and his wife Naseem, they were sitting and watching the Australian Open Women's Final.
Wow.
After having attended an Infosys meet. And I put it out and I questioned them. And that tweet has gone viral.
Yeah.
So what you see today is the after effect of that. Why couldn't he have done that before that?
So you are saying that he was busy. You are claiming
of Australia, he should be taken to task.
You are claiming that in Melbourne he was more important.
Look, one minute. This gentleman, this Sushil Kumar, who is the Consul General in Melbourne, what he does is that on 26th January, when there is a flag hoisting ceremony to take place, these Khalistanis issued threats and he did nothing. What he did was so craven and cowardly that he shifted the timing of the flag hoisting from 9 a.m. to 7 a.m. This is how he is going to counter. These are the kind of officials that we've got in Melbourne and in Australia who are going to keep the Indian flag flying high. I am very sorry to say the number one onus on this lies on the Indian High Commission in Australia.
Yeah, you have only seconded. You have only seconded what I was trying to say, that the members from Australian community, including their journalists, came back and said the same thing. 4 letters have been written, 5 letters have been written, not a response has come. And day after the tricolour was insulted, Manpreet Vora is actually putting out the pictures that he's going and meeting all the temple officials. He's going and paying a visit. So he's gone to ISKCON. A BAPS event happened on the 12th of January. He's putting out the pictures on the 30th of January. That is what is happening.
That also because he was exposed yesterday. I exposed him.
Saraji wants to say something. Saraji, yes, please.
Yeah, I do want to say something, and I think it fits well with what you're talking about in terms of representation. There's a very tokenistic approach in Australia, and the distribution of funding from the government for Hindu charities is like really, it's terrible. Compared with other charities, they should be getting at least about $10 million a year more pro rata population-wise. We should be getting about $10 million more a year to fit with the same that other religious organisations are getting. And on top of that, even though we're getting there was something like $460,000 distributed across all Hindu charities, except there was over $1 million granted to BAPS. So, yes, I didn't mean to upset anyone there, but the money isn't being distributed evenly, and, you know, Hindu voices are being ignored from a range of different viewpoints, and the ones that are staunch and they're defending Hindu human rights and civil rights and, you know, standing up against anti-Hindu hate, which is causing these communal rifts, they're being ignored. So the only way we've been able to get our voices out is on social media by making phone calls. But this diplomatic methodology isn't working. The diplomats are talking to the wrong people. I spoke to BAPS and I said, you know, do you know how much is going on? They had no clue that for years these malicious, vexatious actors had been producing sheer volumes of propaganda against Hindus in the Australian media landscape. I had to tell them, you know, I had to tell them what was going on and say, you need to pass this on to Home Office, because if you don't tell them, something bad's going to happen. It's building up. I can feel it.
No, it's been building up, Saraji, for a while. Vinod Bansalji,
for years.
Are you hearing what the sentiment is of those who have seen what is happening, those who are living there and who have come back, and it is also manifest. Out of respect, I did not make a mention of what he was caught doing or what he is allegedly caught doing, when he should have been focusing on, say, working on, you know, these elements, not disrespecting the tricolour. Sanjay Dixit ji has come out and said. Now, if this is the responsibility and seriousness that's going to be shown by those who are supposed to uphold Indian interests on foreign soil, what else can be expected?
Can I come in for another minute?
Anandji, I do agree with your
after Vinodji,
senior panelists and the learned panelists are there who have exposed everything, and I really appreciate the way they have also seen the picture with their this open eyes actually. आप देखिए कि जिस तरह से इन्होंने 26 जनवरी का वर्णन किया और जिस तरह से जो है अब जो सारा बंजी ने जिस तरह का पूरा डिटेल जो एक्सप्लेनेशन दिया, मुझे लगता है इससे भारत सरकार की आंखें खोल देने वाला एक एपिसोड है। और इंडियन हाई कमीशन टू ऑस्ट्रेलिया, इनसे भी पूछा जाना चाहिए आखिरकार कि क्या क्या कारण रहे और किस तरह से क्यों इस तरह का व्यवहार रहा। और दूसरी बात ये भी है कि ऑस्ट्रेलियन गवर्नमेंट की जो जिस तरह से नाकामी है और जिस तरह से मूक दर्शकता है, वो दैट इज ऑल्सो वेरी सीरियस, because you see if something is propagated and the promoted anti-India and hates and the anti-Hindu hates, so basically that should have been stopped by the government of the soil.
पर गवर्नमेंट ऑफ द सॉइल पर भी कोई ना कोई जाके प्रेशर तो बनाएगा ना, कोई जाके ये कहेगा तो सही, कोई जाके ये कहेगा तो सही, जो कर रहे हैं गलत है, इसको नहीं होने देंगे, और जो करेगा, जो वहां दिखेगा, उसका पासपोर्ट जब्त कर दिया जाएगा या वापस भेज दिया जाएगा। दैट एडवाइजरी वाज आल्सो नॉट देयर, सर।
दो बातें बड़ी इंपॉर्टेंट है। बेसिकली देखिए, जो भारत सरकार ने एक्शन लिया वो हम सबको पता है, लेकिन क्वेश्चन ये है कि ये जो एडिशनल एक्शन पॉइंट जो इन्होंने बताया है कि भाई आखिरकार उनके पासपोर्ट को सीज किया जाए, और साथ में अगर कहीं फेल्योर जिस एम्बेसी लेवल पर है, हाई कमीशन लेवल पर है, तो दैट शुड आल्सो बी गेट इन्वेस्टिगेटेड एंड द एक्शन मस्ट बी टेकन बाय द गवर्नमेंट प्रॉपर्ली एंड दिस टाइमली। ये बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है। मुझे लगता है कि आपके इस चैनल को गवर्नमेंट की मिशनरी और दी फॉरेन ऑफिस भी देख रहे होंगे, तो they will definitely take severe action.
हम तो उम्मीद यही कर रहे हैं, and we are also hoping that Manpreet Vora has some time from his busy schedule to speak with us here at CNN News 18. We'll also approach him and see if he can answer some of the questions that are being posed here. Sanjay ji, final word. I have to wind up.
Yes, I was just I have tried to analyze this problem. What is happening is that the whole disaffection is being spread by basically three mechanisms. You know, there are kabaddi organizers, okay, and most of this business is organized out of Punjab, our Punjab. Then there are Punjabi singers, and then there are student migration agents.
Right.
Now, these three, what these student migration agents do, they recruit the students, the Punjabi or Sikh students, and they promise them, they say that, okay, we have access to politicians and we will get you the permanent residence or we will get you the citizenship.
Yeah.
So that is what they dangle. Then these kabaddi organizers and these singing groups, all these three can be contained out of India itself. And for that, all the High Commissioner had to do was to engage with the community.
Right.
But he sits on a high horse and he doesn't engage at all. And when he gets exposed, then he makes this show of pretense of
it is you. We have
Prime Minister and going to the Babs temple. Please ask him whether he was exposed yesterday.
Well, we will.
He had not
If he agrees to take our questions, we will pose those questions. I thank you, Sanjay ji, and Puneet and Sara ji. Thank you very much, and Vinod Bansal ji, thank you. Please do coordinate with your people back in Australia and your counterparts there and see what the situation on ground is. We're going to take a very short break, but before that, big news coming through. The Russian Foreign Ministry has called the BBC documentary on Prime Minister Narendra Modi as an evidence of waging war or waging information war. Now, the question is in his document. The question that was asked is that the BBC's blamed the Prime Minister of India for the 2002 Gujarat riots. The report is banned. What is Russia's opinion on it? And the answer that came is, I'm not sure if that's a question for us. First of all, it should be commented on in Delhi. Our Indian friends have already made a comment on this situation. I would like to draw your attention to the fact that it is yet another evidence of BBC waging an information war on different fronts, not only against Russia, but also against other global centers of power pursuing an independent policy. After a certain number of years, it turns out that the BBC is fighting even within the British establishment, being an instrument of the interests of some groups against others. It should be treated accordingly. The BBC is not an independent television and radio corporation, but a dependent one, often neglecting the basic requirements of the journalism profession. That's the answer from the Russians on this, ladies and gentlemen. When we come back, it's the insult to the Ramcharitmanas, and yet again, politics being played around it. It's a cycle which is being repeated. And on, once again, misinformation. Why, once again, target Hindu Aastha for votes is a question that we ask. Why sully Aastha for votes? Stay with us.